Oh, I'm live. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Welcome to Virtual Lunch with Kaley Chu number 10. I am Kaley Chu from 100 Lunches, the author of 100 Lunches with Strangers. Today, we're going to talk about the most important lesson that I've learned from having more than 250 lunches with strangers, which is the purpose of our life. I've invited someone I truly, extremely admire to join us today. He was my lunch guest 203, and his name is Peter Baines. Peter Baines was a forensic investigator with Australia Police in 2004. He was sent to Thailand to identify victims of the Boxing Day Tsunami that has taken away more than 200,000 lives. It changed his life forever. Since then, he has built orphanages, set up charity Hands Across Water, and raised millions of dollars and changed so many people's lives. In 2014, Peter was recognized in the Australia Day Honour with the awarding of the Order of Australia Medal for his international humanitarian work. Peter has also received the Most Admirable Order awarded by the King of Thailand for his devotional services to Kingdom of Thailand in 2016. He is the author for the best-selling book, this one, Hands Across Water, and also Doing Good by Doing Good. One of the most incredible human beings I know on earth. So without further delay, please join us and welcome the guest for this week, Peter Baines.
Hey, Kaley, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me. This is my last virtual Lunch with Kaley Chu series, and I'm so happy that, you're the special guest for this week.
Thank you. I'm glad that we were able to have lunch again together, and thank you for that very kind introduction.
Because it's just so beautiful what you have done to the people, and I'm really impressed. When I heard you speak, I think that was sometime this time last year. Like, you made me cry, and just so touched by your action and your selfless and how you helped change so many lives. And I thought I have to have lunch with you and just hear your story. And I'm so glad that you come in to share your story with us today. So would you like to share with us a little bit, a quick version of who are you and, your story?
Yeah, sure. So the background was I spent 22 years with New South Wales Police and trained as a forensic investigator and worked in regional New South Wales for 10 years, but and the rest of the time in Sydney. And my role was to investigate scenes of serious crime and homicides and suicides and suspicious death and so forth, and present the findings of those investigations to courts. In 2002, there was the Bali Bombings where 202 people died, and I was sent to Bali to assist in the identification of those who died. And then it was just over 2 years on from that there was the Boxing Day Tsunami in Southeast Asia, and I was sent over there as part of the leadership team to help identify the 5,500 bodies that we found in Thailand and to return them to their homes and their families, and that was across the globe. And after 2005, where I spent most of my time in Thailand, I then worked with Interpol in Lyon in France on a counter-terrorism project, and I was seconded there for 12 months, and that was extended a couple of times. And I spent time working with the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime throughout Southeast Asia in a capacity building role around leadership and counter-terrorism. And I spent time working for the in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia after some floods in the city of Jeddah in 2010, and also worked in Japan after the tsunami of 2011. So that was kind of the professional side of things, and then it took a change. I guess things really got interesting when I met the kids of Thailand who had lost their homes, lost their families, and were living in a tent and I started Hands Across the Water to support them, and that's where things have gone from there.
Yeah, like you mentioned that you've done so many like big crises like the Bali bombing and the other tsunami, but why that Boxing Day Tsunami makes a huge difference in your life? Like, why is that stand out so much for you?
Yeah, I guess it was because it was such a long engagement, and basically the entire year of 2005 was involved in Thailand, and I spent multiple tours in Thailand for a month at a time, and the role was a significant one. I was leading the Australian team, I was leading an international team, and then even when I was back in Australia, in between tours, I was still working on deploying teams and so forth. And I guess it was, meeting the kids, and it's an unusual thing because I'd always been involved with victims of crime or disaster or crisis or so forth, and it wasn't as though I'm went looking for the opportunity to do something. It wasn't as though I felt I needed to, but just meeting the kids, I realised I couldn't change what had happened, but I could change what happened next. And starting Hands Across the Water, it just felt like it made sense. It felt like I had an opportunity to do something, and I started. And to be honest, I've never stopped because it would feel selfish if I stopped.
Yeah. So tell me more about Hands Across the Water. So what exactly are you doing in Thailand? And yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the when it started, the idea was to build, because we met 32 kids when I was over there on my last tour, and they were living in a tent, and they'd all lost their families, all lost their homes, and they were cared for by a beautiful lady by the name of Kunrochana, who had travelled from Bangkok to support these kids who are now on their own and homeless. And when I met her and the decision to build the home, I naively thought and believed that once I built the home for them, that my role would be finished, that I'd walk away and leave it with them. But it wasn't until I went over there for the opening of the home that I really realised that the challenge had just begun. And because driving away the day after we opened it, I thought, well, who pays for the staff? Who feeds the kids? Who meets their medical needs, their education needs? And I returned to Australia after opening the first home, and with a commitment that this would be something I'd do without an end in sight. And I guess the role of Hands has changed over the years, and we were focused initially on those tsunami kids, and we built a couple of additional properties, because one of the things that I've been experienced or I have experienced is working in these large crisis and disaster areas. There's lots of people turn up. Governments, NGOs, charities and corporates, and they turn up and they pledge support, and but too many of them leave too quickly. And we can look at the bushfires that occurred in Victoria in 2009. We can look at the bushfires that have occurred through New South Wales and Victoria and South Australia and so forth in 2019, 2020, and so many people have moved on, and we don't hear about the needs of those anymore. But there's still, hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are in desperate need of help and support and recovery. And recovery goes for a long time, but we seem to move on. And how quickly COVID came away and took away our attention and focus from what's happened with the bushfire victims. And this is what I saw happen in Thailand. And I've seen it happen in each area that I've worked, is that as soon as it leaves our television screens, as soon as our attention is diverted in another direction, we stop thinking and we stop caring and giving for those that are in need. And so I built, because what happened then was the number of kids that we were supporting just grew. And very quickly, the home that we'd built had double the number of kids it was built for. So we built another home, and then we built an education centre. And then in 2010, I was introduced to a remarkable lady who'd devoted her life, a Thai lady, to supporting kids, many of whom, and the majority of whom, had HIV or who had lost their parents to HIV. And she was living and working in a remote area of Thailand called the Isan region. And it's in the northeast, and there's many people from Thailand that have never been to this area, let alone Westerners. And it's just a really rural area people don't visit. But she was caring for these kids, and the pressure that she faced and the lack of resources meant that she experienced the death of children on a frequent basis. And when I met her in 2010, kids were dying on a regular basis. And in the 30 years that she'd been there, she's buried 1,027 children. And what I learned was that it wasn't something, HIV is not a medical problem anymore. It's one of poverty. And I realised that kids were dying because they didn't have access to food, medicine and support. So that was a project that we took on at hands because I felt like we could do something to support her. And all we had to do was provide her with the resources that she needed, and the kids stopped dying. And by 2011, we turned around that death rate and brought about a lot of change. And since then, Hands has grown, and we're in 7 different locations. And I think, Kaley, if I said what's the one thing Hands stands for, it's about providing a life of choice. Yeah. So we look at what we do and we say we don't measure our success on the number of homes or number of kids, because any charity should be working to make themselves redundant. The best thing that we could do is close down because there's no need. In our sector, growth doesn't mean success. Growth means that there's a continued failure within the sector somewhere. And so we look at what's success for us. It's not about dollars raised. It's what happens when the kids leave our home. When it comes time and it's their choice, what have we provided with them around opportunities? And we know the best thing for kids, with all things being equal, is to be in a family. But when things aren't equal, well, then they come to our homes, and the government and police bring them to us as a place of hope. And so we measure the success of what we do in the life of choice. And we've got a growing number of alumni, kids that graduated from university. We've got 40 odd kids currently enrolled in university, and we know that they'll have much brighter futures because of that long-term commitment.
Thank you, Peter. This is so beautiful, that what you're doing at the moment. So thank you for sharing. Another question, as someone who lives in Australia, somewhere so far and remote from, Thailand and where you're helping, it's really hard for us to picture what exactly it's like when those big crises happen. So can you share a couple of stories with us? So like a firsthand when you were there, how it's like when the tsunami impact the village or something, like how is it like firsthand? What did you see? And some stories that you've encountered.
Yeah,
yourself.
Certainly the level of destruction was something that I hadn't seen before. And I remember sitting in the airport in Denpasar in Bali after the bombings, and we'd been involved in the identification of 202 people who died as a result of that. But here we were in Thailand, and there was 5,500 bodies. And I arrived at a temple at a place called Wat Yan Yao, which is about an hour and a half north of Phuket. And at that temple, there was 3,500 bodies on the ground in this one temple. And many of them were in an advanced state of decomposition. And what advances decomposition in a body is heat and water. And these bodies had come out of the water and were now laying in the heat of Thailand. And it certainly there's sights that will stay with me forever from working over there. At different times people say, I can never imagine what that would look like. And I say, well, that's a good thing. You don't need to imagine, what a decomposed body looks like. I don't think it helps to be exposed to that. But, I think the hardest days that we had, or certainly I had, was dealing with the families who had lost so much, but also the best days that I had was dealing with the families. And it was this real, contradiction where you couldn't spend too much time with the families because it took you on such an emotional roller coaster. But without spending time with the families, there was a risk that you became too detached of what we were doing, because it was a role that was an incredibly privileged one, in that we were repatriating bodies and reuniting families and giving them the dignity of burying their loved one according to their faith and their beliefs. And it was as I say, it was a job that after I was involved in for that 12-month period, I really struggled to think, how will I do anything within the police that comes to a similar level? How will I feel challenged and inspired and so forth after working at a global level? It's such a hugely significant and large scale job, and having a very senior role there. How could I go back to New South Wales Police and still feel challenged? And so while it was an incredible time and something that shaped my life, it's something that I'll always be incredibly fortunate and appreciative that I had the opportunity to be part of.
Thank you, Peter. I don't know, like, before we go into so much details about this, why don't you share a positive story with us? Like, is there most memorable positive stories that you have for what you have done, or reuniting families? Like, the most memorable
one.
Yeah, I guess,
it'd be easy to talk about the work we do with the kids now as being so positive, because it is. And maybe I'll share one story from the police and one story from the work we do with the kids. And I guess the first story is when we were identifying bodies, our role was to repatriate them, so to send them home. And if it was to a foreign country, a member of the police from that country would come to our site where we had done the identification, and they would collect the body, and it would be sent home, and be that back to Australia or England or Germany, wherever they were going. But if it was a Thai national that we had identified, that body would be collected by a member of that family. I met a beautiful lady this day. She was a Thai lady, and she drove 6 hours from where we were to collect the body of her son. Now, she came from a very modest family, and she couldn't afford a coffin. And we'd been caught by this situation once before, where we had to give a loved one back in a body bag. And no one deserves the indignity of receiving their child in a body bag. So as a result of that, we purchased some coffins ourselves, so that when this rare occurrence occurred, we could return that body to that Thai family in a coffin. And I met this lady. She drove 6 hours, and she turned up in the beat up utility, and she had to be at the lowest point of her life. But she had more grace, more dignity, and more compassion than anyone I've ever met, because all she could do was thank us for the work that we'd done in such a way that it made me feel so incredibly bad I couldn't do more for her. But the world's not necessarily a fair place, and I didn't meet this beautiful lady just once. she didn't come twice, but 3 times she came to our site to collect the 3 bodies of her children. And each time she came, she had that same level of grace, dignity, and compassion. And she made me feel incredibly bad every day. And the one thing that I took from that, and it was such a powerful thing, was that we should enjoy what we do or change what we do, because we only get one go. And, you know, and while that might sound like a sad story, you know, I think for me, it was it's such an enduring story, and had such an impact upon me, was the way that this lady turned up and the lesson that I took from it. And hopefully it's something I've shared that might have meant something to someone else since I've shared it. Yeah. And I think you know, then to look at the kids, I think about those, you know, there's so many. I'm trying to think which one to pick. You know, it could be a little boy at Ban Home Hug, our HIV home. His name is PP, and he was so sick, and that all of the other kids had come to meet us on a bike ride that we do in Thailand, and PP was left at home because of how sick he was, and they didn't believe he'd see out the week. But because of the support, the access to medicine, and good health care, he survived that week. He survived the next, and he's gone on now to be a healthy, happy, strong, amazing young boy. And for me, he's the line in the sand. That's where the kids stop dying. And whenever I think of Ban Home Hug, I think of PP. And I guess one other story of the positive nature of all of this is rests with a young man by the name of Game. And at the age of 12, Game was living in the region of Takulpa, where our first home is, and he was living with his auntie. And she was in a violent relationship with an alcoholic, and they said to Game at the age of 12, you need to leave school and get a job if you want to remain in this house. You have to pay your own way. If you can't do that, you need to move out. And he was 12 years old. So Game went to school, and he told school what was happening and that he would have to leave. And they saw what a travesty that would be. And so they contacted Kunrochana, the lady who we'd set up the home with, and asked her, is there room for one more? And we all said, of course there is. So Game was able to move in, and it didn't mean that he didn't have contact with his auntie, but it meant he could stay at school. And he went on, and he was the first of our kids to graduate from high school, and we thought that was a great sign for the future. We supported him into university, and he was the first of our kids to graduate from university. And he graduated with a law degree, and he came and worked for us as our general manager, and looking after our 7 properties in Thailand. And that was his role up until probably about 2.5 years ago that Kunrochana, she had breast cancer, and we dealt with that in 2007 with providing her with access to surgery, and she'd been in the clear, and then 2.5 years ago it returned, and it turned into cancer that spread throughout her body, and she lost her battle with as a result of cancer. And so Game left his job in Bangkok working with us, and he returned to Ban Tham Nam Chai, which is the first home we built, which is where he grew up. And he's now the director of that home. And he's bringing so much love and hope and happiness to the children there. And if that's not enough, on weekends, he's studying his MBA in psychology, so he can be the best he can be for the kids. And so I look at those stories. I look at the opportunities the kids have now, and it's a good reflection on happy days.
Such a beautiful story. I know there are so many more stories that you've got, but just give me a general picture. How much money you've raised so far, and how many kids have you helped in those homes?
Yeah, since we started, we've raised over 25 million Australian dollars, and we've operated in that we don't spend donors' money on administration or fundraising. And when we started, I started the fundraising. I was speaking at conferences and talking about leadership and different lessons that I've learnt and people I've been exposed to, and I was getting paid to do that, and continues to this day. But initially, that payment that I was receiving, I donated that to the charity, and that was how I contributed to the building of the first home. So there was no costs involved. We had no staff, we had no premises. I didn't need to take any money out of the charity because I was employed by the police at the time. So from the speaking fees, that became the source of income. Then as we grew, as Hands grew, in 2009, I resigned from the police because I was given an ultimatum by work, and that ultimatum meant that I wouldn't have time to focus on the charity, and so that became too important, so I resigned. And ever since then, I realised the importance that people were attaching to how we were using donors' funds, but I also knew that that the growth of the organisation couldn't exist just on the work I was doing or volunteers, and you're limited if you're not taking care of administration and marketing and all of the governance and compliance, and that costs money. So in 2011, I set up a company which sits next to the charity. Now that company operates as a social enterprise, and it undertakes its own commercial activities. It's now called Hands Group, and it's a proprietary limited company that is completely separate from Hands, a charity. Now the role of Hands Group is to undertake these commercial activities, and the funds that we generate through those activities pay for the staff that we now employ here in Australia and underwrite all the administration and fundraising costs. So when someone donates, $10 or $100, 100% of those donors' funds go to the kids and communities that we support in Thailand, and it's something that we've been able to continue to do that way, and donors appreciate that. And there's full transparency around all of that. All of our audited financials are available on our website to download, and the impact on kids, well, I guess it's in the thousands now that have come through, because we also have an outreach program where we support families to keep kids in their homes. And so, as I said, the thing for us is not having more, having less is a sign of us doing well. So we support families who don't have the economic means and may otherwise be asking us to look after their kids. But currently we have just over 300 kids across the 7 centres, and they're just big homes. They're wonderful, beautiful homes, and as I said before, we've got the scholarship programs that support the kids through uni, and we've got a real investment in their further education and job opportunities. In June, we were supposed to be over there for the opening of our latest centre, which is a learning centre focused on digital technology and digital education around coding and so forth. And a big focus for us there is creating opportunities, not just for our kids, but for the community of Yossaton, which is, again, is a real regional community where just like our outback and regional communities here in Australia, where kids might grow up and go to school, but they leave those communities because there's no job opportunities. So our work in building this digital training centre is so that we can then undertake commercial activities or win commercial projects and contracts where the kids and the community members can remain within their community, remain within their homes and their villages, and but be able to receive a well remunerated salary for their work. So our focus is always long term and creating that choice.
Yeah, I really love what you do. I've got your book here, Hands Across Water, and it's got so many lovely photos. So the kids, I know that the kids that you're helping, you not just feed them and give them a bed, you also make sure that they feel like this is home for them. They are loved and someone actually cares about them so that they can grow up and get the education that they need and go and help more people. And that's just so beautiful. And I'm extremely impressed when you told me that 100% of the fund that get donated goes straight to the kids, because I look at a lot of charity reports and some great ones got like 80-something% goes to the people in need. And because all charity needs administrations and fundraising costs, and you absorb all of them and make sure that, you know, all the money goes to the people in need. That's just so beautiful. So thank you so much, Peter. That was just amazing. I do want to get some advice from you though, because I know you've been dealing with so many really extremely stressful situations that's beyond our imagination. And at the moment with the global pandemic, I feel like a lot of my friends, people around me, sometimes feeling a little bit low or a little bit just not happy because of social distancing and everything else. So can you give us some tips on how do we manage that, or how do we, you know, how did you do that? Because I couldn't even imagine how would I able to do something like that, because you must be so strong to manage your emotions. And I don't know. So can you just give us some tips on how do we do that? Or how can we help the people around us to do that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. And the first is that your loss is your biggest loss. Yeah. And so what I mean by that is the loss that we've all experienced as a result of COVID-19 will be different, and for some it can be their job, and they might attach to that purpose and meaning, and it might be about their personal identity, and that can be a really massive thing. There might be people who lose a family business. And there might be people who have just lost their freedom, and for kids, it's the loss of being able to play with their mates. And what I've learned is that I don't think it helps us is to try to compare or quantify the loss against someone else. So I don't think that it's of good value or use to us to try to say, well, look at these people, they're in a much worse position, because, you know, they might be, but for us, we're dealing with our own loss. So I think it's okay to be sad. I think it's okay to go through this stage of grief and loss and anger and resentment and all of those things that are associated with grief, because grief is about loss. It's not, a lot of people associate it with death, but it's not. The grief is about loss, and so we've all lost something as a result of this. And as I say, it will be different things for different people. So I think the first thing is to be okay that you're feeling that way. I think that there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly natural. But I also to take it on a different level is, working in these different crisis situations, I saw the flow of energy keep repeating itself. And I developed this model, which I called crisis clock. And I'll give you an example of how that plays out and where I think it is really, really useful to understand that right now for us. I'll give you two examples that people might be able to relate to. So when we deployed into Thailand, we were going for 1 month at a time. And when you're flying over there for the first deployment, tell me, Kaley, what emotions and what feelings do you think are going through you when you're on the plane heading to Thailand for that very first time?
I'd say shocking. That's the first thing. From what you described, I couldn't even imagine how it's like to have 5,500 bodies. Like, and then just sad feeling, like don't know what, like helpless. Probably that's the best word, helpless, because you don't know what to do to help them. You can't revive them. You can't make them live again. But what are you going to do with so many families that lost their loved one? You just can't do enough. Like this, you just can't do enough to help them. So I don't know
you
how
know,
to
and
do
that's right. Like flying over there was all these different emotions, all these different questions that were going through our minds. And, you know, there's one where you're excited because it's such a big job that you're going to do, and that's what we've been trained to do. So there's anxiety, there's worry, there's, you know, questions around your ability and skills, and you're flying into a country where English isn't the first spoken language. You don't know where to go. You don't know what your accommodation is going to be like. You don't know the working conditions. You don't know who you'll be working with. There's all these questions, and I call that the frantic stage. And if we look at that, and that's the first quarter of this crisis clock that we're going through, overlay that to what we saw in the response after COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, and we had, you know, the lunacy that went on with the rush around toilet paper and the hoarding and all of that kind of stuff that just never made sense. There was no logical step to go from the virus that we're going to run out of toilet paper. There was nothing, you know, but it's because people are behaving irrationally. Yeah. That's in the first stage. That's the frantic stage. The second stage that we move into is one of a controlled stage. So for us in Thailand, this was week number 2. This is when you knew what you were doing. You were settled into the role. You're most productive. You knew where to go. You knew how to get to work and transport, and you knew who reported to you, who you reported to. New people were coming in, so you weren't the newest person on the block anymore. So this second stage is the controlled stage. And for us, through COVID, it's when we've settled into working from home. We've all adapted to meetings by Zoom. We've got our systems down. We're structured. We're okay. But the third quarter is the most challenging stage, and this is the working stage. And this is, for us in Thailand, this was week number 3. And you knew you were there for a month. So 3 quarters in, you're sick of getting up at the same time, the same day, to go and eat the same breakfast, to go and do the same things, to deal with body after body after body. That was what you were dealing with, and you were missing your family, missing homes, and you were at your least productive in this 3-quarter stage. Now, this is what we're seeing with COVID-19 now, is that people they're sick of the restrictions, they're sick of isolation, they're challenging it. The idea of all, complying is no longer there. People are pushing the boundaries. People are angry. People are upset. People are now looking at what they've lost. They're looking forward, going, what's this going to be like? And there's this anger. There's, deeper sense of loss and regret and resentment and all of this. The final stage to this, and for us, it was week 4, our energy went back up, because we knew we were going home. We knew that it was coming to an end. And we either had continuity in that we were passing on to someone else, or it was coming to an end. So I think we're in between stage 3 and 4, depends who you talk to and where you are right now. And what I'm hearing when I'm talking to different groups is that they've moved from stage 2. They're certainly either been in or coming out of, or recognise stage 3. But stage 4 is, okay, well, we can see that the restrictions have been lifted. We know that there's some dates wrapped around things now, and we can start to look at resuming what might have been, a more normal life for us. So I think the important thing in saying all of that is to be okay, that we don't have to be feeling great about everything all the time. but to do things that will help us move from 3 to 4. And for those that are leading teams, those that are looking after families and supporting other people, where it's community groups or work or whatever, as leaders, if we understand this cycle of energy, then we're in a much better position to help people come out of it, to know personally that this will change, that things will get better, that there is the light at the end of the tunnel. All of these things that we're just stuck in that 3/4, and to help us move through. So as leaders, it's around, being present and providing a heightened level of communication and contact and support and being there. But again, knowing that it's okay to feel this, it's okay to recognize your loss, but that it does change. So I think that's the most important thing that I'm certainly hearing and talking about right now.
Thank you so much. That's so important. I completely agree with you. And I hope that I can do more to move a lot more people from phase 3 to phase 4. That's just great. Thank you so much, Peter. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to jump on the comment section and ask Peter. You've given us so much, tips and stories, and thank you so much for that. Is there anything we can do for you, Peter?
I guess it's one of the things that for us, I've spoken a lot about hands and the work that we do, and one of the real challenges, there was a report I read from an industry body in the charity sector called Good to Give, and it had surveyed the charity sector, and their response was that 32% of charities that were surveyed don't expect that they will survive 6 months because of the impact of this. And thankfully, at Hands, we'd worked long and hard to secure some good savings, but our operating costs are $1.9 million a year, and the difference in if your business is struggling, if you can't make sales, is you close the door and a lot of your costs stop, and because you're not in production. But for us, the costs don't change, and the cost of feeding the kids, keeping our staff employed, and meeting all of the obligations we have in Thailand, that doesn't change just because of COVID. But our ability to raise money has certainly changed, because a big part of our raising funds is creating these shared experiences where we take people on bike rides into Thailand, and as a private group or as a corporate group or public group, we ride between 500 and 800 kilometres, and we can't do that. So our ability to raise money has certainly been restricted. So one of the things that we're doing, it starts in June, is our virtual Ride to Provide, and we're really excited about it. We've got it's different than a lot of the virtual challenges that exist out there right now, and where they just say, here's your target, go and do what you can, and we'll support you with some Instagram posts or some high fives or so forth, But what we've done with ours is we've actually had our team in Thailand record. They're still there today doing it, driving the route from Bangkok to Khao Lak, which is 800 kilometres, and we've got the GoPro footage. And so people who join us on this virtual ride will be able to ride with us in our Zoom room at 7 a.m. or midday, and ride on their spin bike or wind trainer down the roads. And the other part to it is that we've got all these amazing guests that we'll be interviewing during our sessions, and people get to hear them. But if riding's not your thing, well, you can contribute through walking or running, or you've got the whole month to make up these kilometres and be out riding on your bike outside, whatever. So that's what we're doing, and that's probably the biggest thing we're focusing on right now, is to secure funding to help us through this period where we can't travel at the moment.
Yeah, I've never thought of how hard it is for charities. It must be extremely hard for people. So I'm great that you still, what's the word, like doing different things to make sure that, you're still helping those kids there. So that's beautiful. Is that the right2provide.com.au if people want to check out more information?
That's it, Kaley, right2provide.com.au.
Awesome.
It costs $49 to sign up, so it's $1.16 a day. We can all afford that, Kaley.
Okay, I will sign up after we finish this, and yeah, come and let's support more kids there. And we've got a question for you, Peter, from Noshi. How do you hold back your emotions? Like, how do you cope, and what's your strategy there when you're feeling that's too much, overwhelming or something?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I guess it's not a case of holding them back. It's a case of understanding what we're there to do and have the real clarity of purpose around why I do it. And for me, it's always been about providing answers to families. And, you know, it might have been through the investigation of scenes of crime, you were providing answers. And then into Thailand and Bali, it was about repatriating bodies and providing the answer, which was their loved one back, and knowing the best thing I could do was to do that. And as I said earlier on, with the high, you know, the most rewarding and most challenging time was working with families, and part of it was in some way keeping a professional and emotional distance from becoming too attached to the victims, because if we become too attached to each victim, you know, whether it's a child or a mother or husband or father that we're identifying, and if we become too attached, well, then we can't be the best we can be for the next 10 bodies that we've got to work on that day and identify and repatriate home. But it's also, as I said, is finding the balance, because the significance and the honour that we had of identifying loved ones, we know that for every family, the most important person was their loved one. And so it was finding the balance between becoming too emotionally detached and too attached to it. And I guess it was just through a career of being involved with this is that I learned the best thing I could do was try to find that happy balance between both places.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. I've got so many more questions for you, but I'm aware that the time is 47 minutes into the interview. So just one very last question for you. Because of the topic for today, it's the purpose of life. So what is the purpose of your life? I know you're doing so many things, but if you just summarize it in a couple of sentences, what would be the purpose of your life?
Yeah, look, you know, outside of being a husband and a father and, you know, like all of us trying to make the best of the situations, I guess if I try to take it all to a contextual level and sum it up, as you just said, it is that providing answers. And for me, the questions have just changed. Initially, it might have been investigating a suicide, then it was investigating or responding to crisis and disaster, and then setting up hands. And you know, the answers that we provide to the kids now is around opportunities in their future and providing hope and so forth. And so on a contextual level, that's kind of where I sit with feeling that that's what I'm contributing to.
Thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate your time. Is there any final suggestions, advice for you, for our audience here? The biggest takeaway I've got so far, I really love what you said earlier about enjoy what you do or change what you do. That's just so powerful. I don't think I can get that out from my head for a long time. That's just so beautiful. Thank you. But is there any other advice that you can give us or something?
Yeah, I guess the only thing would be that, you know, I've heard a lot with people in lockdown how they've tried to do something new and, you know, learn a new language or cooking or music or whatever. And, you know, I think that all of us have dreams. And if you ask people to share their dreams, some they will and some they won't. And the reason they won't share some of their dreams is a fear of what other people will say. And I guess the thing that I'd encourage everyone now is, as we come out, it's like starting a new relationship. You know, there's an opportunity to reinvent yourself, and the things that we might have wanted to do, but we thought we didn't have time, or we had to get the kids through school, then through university, or all of this, whatever it is, don't wait for the time to be right, because that time might never come. And as we come out, if you've got dreams and they're massive dreams, don't let people put excuses in the way. Just find a reason to go after them.
Thank you so much. That's so good. I will make sure I remember that. I do have big dreams and big goals that I want to achieve, and people that I want to help. So thank you so much for the encouragement. Thank you. So powerful. Thank you. Yes. I don't know what everybody thinking. Maybe I should put John back. Hello, John. Thank you for joining us again. This is our very last virtual lunch show. So thank you for being there for me the whole time and being super supportive. I don't know how you feel about the interview with Peter, but I'm just so touched at the moment. Don't know what to say.
What a fantastic guy. And I want to thank Peter for two things. One, for the amazing work that he does, and two, for inspiring each of us to live a life of purpose. So I think that's fantastic on two levels. And I loved his comment, pardon me, right at the beginning, where he said, you may not be able to change what happened, but you can change what happens next. And I think that's a really powerful reminder for all of us. So yeah, very, very cool guy. And jump on the virtual bike ride, jump on hands. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I don't know, just so beautiful. Like, he's such an incredible human being, and yeah, he just made me more certain about what I want to do. I feel really sad that this is the very last virtual lunch show for a little while. We'll come back for sure.
Don't be happy we've had 10 awesome lunches.
Yeah, but we're happy about the 10 awesome lunches, and also focus on what I really want to achieve, my big dream at the moment about the 100 lunches, and because I can see how many people we can help in life, that we can change from what we're doing at the moment. It's just so meaningful. So what about you, John? What's the purpose of your life?
The purpose of my life? Well, you know what's really interesting about purpose statements? I find that each person's purpose statement is like the plot for the novel of their life, you know. So it's interesting listening to other people's statements and just seeing what they want to do. My purpose is to make deep and meaningful connections with people, to make contributions big and small to both individuals and the world, and to help people get clear on what they really want to be known for in life, so they can live a life of purpose, and then help them amplify their impact, you know, create wealth and do good in the world, and leave a lasting legacy.
That's awesome. Do you remember the purpose of my life?
Yours is about 9 pages long.
No, not 9 pages long. The purpose of my life is to love, to give, to bring joy, positive energy, and positive impact to people. Live my life to the fullest. Be real, be genuine, be me, and be a role model for my sons. I can repeat that 10 times for you, because this is so important. What I've learned throughout all the lunches and everything is that's why I want to have this final series of virtual lunches as the purpose of life, because that is what kept me going all the time. Because as a human being, as Peter just said earlier, we have our ups and downs, and when I'm feeling not the best of me, that's what kept me going, is just remind myself what's the purpose of my life. And the purpose of my life, let me repeat that, is to love, to give, to bring joy, positive energy, positive impact to people, live my life to the fullest, be real, be genuine, be me, and be a role model for my son. So, yeah.
I think I've heard it so many times, I almost know it off by heart. That's good.
Yeah, it's just important. Keep reminding ourselves, because we need that. And yeah, is there any final words you want to say, John? Because I just don't feel like I want to end this. I just want to keep this forever. That's why I'm keep going.
It's fine. Couple of things. First of all, a massive thank you to everybody who's been part of these lunches. So all the people who've come along and supported the lunches and got involved and asked the questions and made the comments. Thank you so much, because you know that's what makes the whole exercise worthwhile. So that's been amazing. And I think I wrote something recently about this whole process that we're going through right now being from kind of OMG, the initial shock of our situation, to this is me. So Peter made a fantastic comment about starting a new relationship. And I said, you can start a new relationship with life on the end of this process that we're all going through now. So hopefully you can all do that and be amazing and go and become what it is that you want to be known for and do good in the world. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, John. You are amazing. Thank you. And if I have to leave anything for the audience, there are just a few questions that I want to ask you. What are you chasing for at the moment? What is really important for you? What can you do to make the world a slightly better place? And more importantly, what is the purpose of your life? So that's all I've got to share. So thank you once again for everyone who's supporting us in the last 10 weeks. This was such a beautiful journey, and I'm really, really very grateful and appreciate all of you. I know it sounds weird, but I really love you also. Thank you so much. I love you. Thank you.
And well done, Kaley, on the hosting as well.
Oh, thank you. Well done, John, for hosting. Thank you. Bye, everyone. I love you all. Thank you.
See you guys. Keep smiling.